Hello, I'm Rabbi Elton from the Great Synagogue in Sydney, and welcome to From the Rabbi's Bookshelves. This video is part of a three-part series which will look at the major theological works of one of the great Talmudists and philosophers of Judaism in the 20th century, Rabbi Joseph B Soloveitchik. He was born in Lithuania in 1903 and died in Boston in 1993, and he came to America in the 1930s, went to Boston first of all, and then from the 1940s commuted from there to New York, where he was the leading Rosh Yeshiva, the leading Talmudist at Yeshiva University. He ordained some 2,000 rabbis and was enormously impactful on their rabbinates and those of their students. He was a great Talmudist, but also a very important philosopher, influenced by Kierkegaard, by existentialism, by Neoplatonism, and other contemporary philosophical movements. He wrote several important theological works, including a work called Confrontation on Interfaith Relations, and a work called Kol Dodi Dofek, The Voice of My Beloved Knocks, a quotation from the book of Song of Songs about religious Zionism. In this series I want to look at three, I think, his most important theological works, and the first is this, Halakhic Man, which was published in 1944 in Hebrew and subsequently translated. Halakhic Man is Rabbi Soloveitchik's idea of the perfect individual living under the sway of the Halakha, of divine law as brought down in the rabbinic texts. For Rabbi Soloveitchik, the ideal religious life, at least for the Jew, is to live in perfect accordance with the Halakha, with Jewish law, and he explicates and explores this type of personality in the volume. Let me give you an example of the way Halakhic Man works. So, for example, when you and I look at a sunset, we may admire its beauty in purely aesthetic terms, and we may even ascribe to it divine providence, that God has created a beautiful world with a beautiful sunset. But not Halakhic Man. Halakhic Man sees something different. This is what Rabbi Soloveitchik writes. When Halakhic Man looks towards the western horizon and sees the fading rays of the setting sun, or to the eastern horizon and sees the first light of dawn and the glowing rays of the rising sun, he knows that this sunset or sunrise imposes upon him anew obligations and commandments. Dawn and sunrise obligate him to fulfill those commandments that are performed during the day, the recitation of the morning Shema, tzitzit, the fringes on a garment, tefillin, the phylacteries, the morning prayer, etrog, shofar, hallel, and the like. They make the time fit for the carrying out of certain halakhic practices, and so on and so forth. So when Halakhic Man sees a sunrise or a sunset, he thinks immediately, how does this oblige me in new commandments given to me by God and interpreted by the rabbis? He sees the world in halakhic terms. So that's the first very important contribution of this volume, explaining what it means to be a perfect halakhic individual. There are also very engaging vignettes of his own family history. He was the grandson of Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik, the Rabbi Brisk, who really created a modern form of conceptual analysis known as lomdus. And he tells stories of his ancestors, including his ancestor Reb Chaim. Here's a very famous excerpt from the book which talks about the fundamental role of a rabbi in the view of the Rabbi Brisk Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, because he's making the point that Halakhic Man is not simply an automaton, he's also deeply committed to justice and righteousness. My uncle, said Rabbi Soloveitchik, Rabbi Meir Berlin, told me that once Reb Chaim of Brisk was asked what the function of a rabbi was. Reb Chaim replied, to redress the grievances of those who are abandoned and alone, to protect the dignity of the poor, and to save the oppressed from the hands of the oppressor. That is the fundamental duty of the rabbi, to come to the aid of those who are in need and uphold them and support them. So Halakhic Man is not just somebody who acts like a robot and does what he's supposed to do, but it's somebody who cares deeply for the well-being of all people, and that is achieved, amongst other ways, through the halakha. Thanks for joining.